December 22nd, 1962. Britain wakes to bitterly cold winds. Nobody knows it yet, but this is the beginning. The start of the coldest winter in 200 years. 3 months of ice, snow, and survival. The big freeze has arrived. Families were preparing for Christmas. Shopping, decorating, planning. The wireless played festive songs. Nobody suspected what was coming. High pressure had moved northeast of Britain, dragging Siberian winds across the entire country. The temperature dropped. Then it dropped further. Winter arrived with vengeance. Boxing Day brought the first snow. 4 inches fell across southern England. Brenda Lee sang "Rocking Around the Christmas Tree" on every wireless. Children rushed outside delighted. Adults smiled. Pretty, they thought. Festive. Nobody imagined this snow would remain for 60 days straight. Glasgow received its first white Christmas since 1938. Scottish children celebrated. By December 29th, everything changed. Overnight, a blizzard swept across Wales and southern England. 10 more inches fell. Gale-force easterly winds created drifts 20 feet deep in places. Roads vanished beneath snow. Railways stopped running completely. Telephone lines snapped under ice weight. Villages across Britain found themselves cut off from civilization. In Chelsea, snow reached 7 inches with drifts 2 feet high. In Gravesend, 14 inches lay everywhere. The chaos began. New Year's Eve 1962 was the quietest anyone remembered. Few Londoners braved the freezing weather outside. Temperatures hovered at or below 0 degrees. The celebrations were cancelled. Britain huddled indoors. And still, the snow kept falling. January would prove even worse. January 1963 remains the coldest month recorded since January 1814 in central England. The average temperature was -2.1 degrees Celsius. In mid-January, Arctic winds delivered another 4 inches of snow. Britain was drowning in white. Snow lay 6 inches deep in Manchester city centre, 9 inches in Wythenshawe, 18 inches at Keele University in Staffordshire. By month's end, Kent had drifts 8 feet deep. Western areas reported drifts 15 feet tall. Some villages disappeared entirely beneath snow. On January 18th, Braemar in Scotland recorded -22.2 degrees Celsius. The coldest temperature measured that entire winter. People woke to windows completely frosted over. Car engines refused to start. Water pipes burst everywhere. Britain had become an Arctic wilderness. Rivers and lakes froze solid across Britain. The Thames didn't freeze in London, but it did in Oxford. On January 22nd, someone drove a car across the frozen river there. The ice held firm. Unthinkable. Yet there it was, happening. The sea froze. Actually froze. Ice extended a mile off the coast at Herne Bay in Kent. Whitstable Harbour turned solid. Chatham Dockyard remained open only because the Royal Navy deployed an icebreaker. Other London docks stayed closed for weeks. Ice floes and mini icebergs floated down the Thames near London. Unbelievable sights. Britain wasn't supposed to look like this. Canal systems froze solid, stopping goods transport completely. Coal, food, essential supplies couldn't move. Britain was paralyzed. And February brought worse conditions. Farmers faced nightmares. Snow lay so deep they couldn't reach their livestock. Animals were trapped, starving, freezing. On Dartmoor, 6,000 sheep and cattle went without food for 4 days, until helicopters finally dropped supplies. Many animals didn't survive at all. Livestock losses were severe across Britain. Sheep trapped by snowdrifts froze overnight. Cattle couldn't reach water or food. Farmers dug through snow with bare hands, trying to save animals. Too often, they found frozen bodies instead. The financial losses devastated families completely. Entire villages were cut off for days, sometimes weeks. No roads in, no roads out. A Wiltshire orphanage housing 30 children under 5 was stranded for 3 days, desperate for milk. 14 people were marooned in a pub. Others weren't nearly so lucky. The Royal Air Force flew supply missions across Britain. Helicopters dropped food, milk, medicine to isolated communities. Even Princetown prisoners received RAF supplies. Army personnel worked around the clock clearing roads. Able-bodied volunteers shoveled snow until their hands bled. Community spirit emerged strongly. Postmen walked miles delivering mail when vans couldn't get through. People dug out old sleds from attics, using them to bring fuel into villages. Everyone helped everyone. Neighbors checked on elderly residents daily. Coal merchants were overwhelmed with orders. Power cuts became routine. Refuse went uncollected for weeks. Water mains froze solid and burst. People collected water from road tankers. Frozen pipes were everywhere. Plumbers couldn't keep up with demand. Homes went without heating. Families huddled together for warmth, wearing coats indoors constantly. Food prices soared 30%. Fresh vegetables were scarce and expensive. Cox's apples cost 6 pence per pound, tomatoes the same. Eggs reached 4 shillings 6 pence per dozen. Housewives replaced fresh vegetables with tinned and frozen alternatives. Millions of milk bottles simply disappeared. Supplies of cabbages, Brussels sprouts, and cauliflower were drastically reduced. Carrots became expensive luxuries. New potatoes were affected too. Families rationed carefully. Every meal mattered. Waste became unthinkable. Britain was learning survival again, just like wartime. Nobody complained about rationing anymore. Wildlife suffered terribly. Millions of small birds survived only because people put out food in gardens. Foxes, squirrels, and other wild animals became tame, appearing in gardens desperately searching for anything edible. They were starving. Nature itself was breaking down. Britain's countryside faced ecological disaster nobody could prevent or stop. Sport collapsed completely. The Big Freeze devastated British football. On January 12th, 261 matches were postponed nationwide. Record numbers. Saturday afternoons without football felt wrong, unnatural. Fans attempted to thaw cars and clear driveways instead. The season extended into March, fixtures piling up impossibly. Lincoln City versus Coventry City was postponed a record 15 times. 15. When Birmingham City and Bury finally played, they drew 3-3, necessitating a replay. Some FA Cup matches moved to neutral grounds, hoping for better conditions. It rarely helped. Everywhere was frozen solid and buried deep. Bolton Wanderers went the longest period without a match in Football League history. Their last game before the freeze was January 8th against Tottenham, a 1-0 victory at Burnden Park. Then, nothing. Weeks passed. Players trained indoors when possible. Fitness deteriorated. When football finally resumed, form had vanished completely. On February 9th, only 7 matches took place in England. Every single game in Scotland was postponed. Every one. The football pools became farcical. Lord Brabazon complained forecasting was impossible. Still, the system continued. People needed something, anything, to maintain normality. Football represented British life itself being frozen. Chelsea Football Club flew to Malta to play a friendly match and stayed an entire week. They'd been performing brilliantly before the freeze. Afterwards, they went on a losing streak. The disruption destroyed their rhythm completely. Still, they achieved promotion to First Division by season's end. Final match. Everything depended on it. Railways struggled desperately. At Coley Junction in Gloucestershire, a mail train froze solid on the tracks. Workers had to light fires underneath the engine to thaw it enough to move. Snow buried tracks everywhere. Points froze. Signals failed. Britain's transport network collapsed. The country was effectively broken into isolated islands. Airports closed completely. Flights were cancelled indefinitely. Road transport stopped. The M1 motorway was impassable. Main roads disappeared under snow. Side roads were hopeless. Only main routes received any clearing, and that was barely adequate. Villages remained cut off. Britain had returned to medieval isolation. Modern infrastructure meant nothing. Despite the misery, moments of joy emerged. Children tobogganed and built snowmen. The Thames saw its first car rally on ice in living memory. Someone invented ice skiing, towing skiers behind cars across frozen surfaces. Canals became skating rinks. Britain adapted, made the best of impossible circumstances. What else could anyone do? The British spirit shone through. Humour survived. Neighbours helped neighbours. Communities pulled together. Everyone shared what little they had. Nobody complained. Well, everyone complained constantly, but they kept going anyway. That's what mattered. Moaning while carrying on. Grumbling while helping. Thoroughly, unmistakably British resilience throughout. February 1963 brought no relief whatsoever. Snow continued falling. Storms raged, with winds reaching force 8, gale force. A 36-hour blizzard caused drifting across most of the country. Drifts reached 20 feet high. Gales hit 81 miles per hour. Pure destructive force. On the Isle of Man, wind speeds reached 119 miles per hour, hurricane force. Roofs were torn off buildings, trees snapped like matchsticks. The combination of extreme cold, heavy snow, and hurricane winds created conditions nobody alive had experienced before. Britain was under siege from nature itself. Weather patterns refused to change. High pressure sat northeast of Britain week after week, dragging endless Siberian winds across the country. Meteorologists watched helplessly. Every forecast predicted more cold, more snow, more ice. No end visible. Winter had settled in permanently. Or so it seemed then. By late February, exhaustion set in nationwide. People were tired, bone tired. Tired of cold, tired of snow, tired of struggling for basics like water and warmth, tired of cancelled everything, tired of surviving. Morale was breaking. Would spring never come? Would Britain ever thaw? Would life resume? If you're remembering this winter yourself, or learning about when Britain truly froze solid, please like this video and subscribe. Hit that bell for more British history that shaped our nation. Every week, we explore the moments that made us who we are. Let's keep these memories alive together. Late February looked identical to early January. Nothing had changed. Snow still covered Britain from coast to coast. Temperatures remained below freezing. Ice was everywhere. Rivers stayed frozen. The sea remained solid. Roads were still impassable. Villages still cut off. Winter's grip showed no signs of weakening whatsoever. People stopped believing spring would ever arrive. Children born that winter knew only snow and ice. For them, this was normal. This was Britain. Elderly residents remembered 1947's harsh winter, but even they admitted 63 was worse. Much worse. The coldest since 1740. Then, finally, early March brought change. Mild southwesterly winds arrived. The temperature increased. On March 6th, there were no frosts anywhere in the entire United Kingdom. Not one. In London, the temperature reached 17 degrees Celsius. Unbelievable warmth after months of freezing. Spring had returned. The snow melted quickly, too quickly. 2 months of accumulated snow and ice disappeared within days. Rivers swelled, streams overflowed. The ground couldn't absorb water fast enough. With the thaw came flooding. Severe flooding. Britain had survived the freeze. Now it faced drowning instead. New crisis emerged. Roads that had been buried under snow now sat under water. Homes that survived the freeze flooded instead. People bailed out basements and ground floors desperately. The water kept rising. Emergency services were overwhelmed again. Different disaster, same exhaustion. Britain couldn't catch a break. Nature wasn't finished yet. The cleanup took weeks. Snow debris, flood damage, broken infrastructure. Everything needed repair. Pipes needed fixing. Roads needed clearing. Railways needed restoring. Buildings needed drying out. The cost was staggering. Insurance companies faced unprecedented claims. The economic impact would last years. Britain had survived, but barely. Farmers counted losses. So many animals dead, crops ruined, soil damaged by prolonged freezing. Financial ruin faced many families. Compensation programs were inadequate. Rural Britain suffered most. Towns recovered faster, but farms, villages, the countryside bore scars for years. Some families never fully recovered from losses, but Britain survived. Communities emerged stronger. People remembered who helped, who shared, who cared. Bonds formed during crisis lasted decades. Neighbors became friends. Strangers became neighbors. The freeze tested British character and found it solid, resilient, unbreakable. That mattered more than anything. Britain endured. Newspapers declared victory over winter. The big freeze of 1963 entered history books immediately. One of Britain's coldest winters on record. Only 1683 to 84 and 1739 to 40 had been colder. 300 years of records. 63 ranked third worst ever. Spring finally properly arrived. Green shoots pushed through soil, trees budded, birds sang again, warmth returned. Cliff Richard sang Summer Holiday on every wireless, cheering everyone up. Life resumed. Slowly, carefully, gratefully. Britain breathed again. The nightmare was over. Normal life felt miraculous after such hardship. Children played outside without coats. Revolutionary. Adults sat in gardens. Unthinkable. People forgot how wonderful simple warmth felt, how miraculous sunshine was, how precious normal weather could be. Spring 1963 wasn't just a season. It was salvation, liberation. Britain had been released from prison. Those who lived through 63 never forgot it. Ever. Decades later, they'd say, "Cold? This isn't cold. You should have seen 1963. It became the benchmark, the standard, the winter against which all others were measured and found wanting. Nothing matched 63. Modern winters seem mild by comparison, even harsh ones. Even when we complain about cold and snow now, it's nothing compared to 63. Central heating helps enormously. Modern insulation, better infrastructure, emergency services, technology. We're better prepared now. But we've also forgotten how tough we can be. The Big Freeze taught Britain important lessons about preparedness, about community, about resilience, about what matters when everything else stops working. Not possessions, not convenience, people. Helping each other, looking out for neighbors, sharing what little we have. That's what survives. That's what endures always. 60 years have passed. The children who played in that snow are grandparents now. But they remember. They tell their grandchildren stories about the winter Britain froze, the year everything stopped, when survival wasn't guaranteed, when community mattered most. The winter Britain will never, ever forget.